Hello, everybody, and welcome back to day 3 of our top 8 streams of the Victory Road World Cup of Pokémon VGC, sponsored by Elgato, GG Tour, and Metafi. In our first 3 games just now, we have concluded the left side of the bracket and decided who is going into the top 4 of our World Cup. Yeah, so my name is Evan, and I'm joined once again by Maeve on the desk, and we're bringing you guys the last 2 matches of our broadcast this week.
Yeah, I'm super excited to continue to move on to that right side of the bracket. At this point as well, something that I saw in chat that somebody said was, I think all of the colors that are remaining in bracket for the flags are red, white, and blue now that India has been knocked out, which is actually pretty interesting, right? It's not exactly something you see very often. But I think I'm super excited to move to the right side. The United States and France, I think, is one that's going to be really interesting to kind of see how that plays out. France coming off of that big victory against Italy last week. Italy was the runner-up in last year's World Cup, but also Thailand and Poland, right? Thailand came off that giant win against Japan. They've had a really, really incredible run, and I know Poland probably has to do a lot in order to allow for themselves to move on because it is such a daunting prospect. And there is still a chance as well that we could see the Thailand-Poland match wrap up because they are at 3-1. They are technically at a match point. But before we even break it down between Thailand and Poland, we have one more match between the United States and France to get through first, and that is going to be between Brady Smith and Aurélien Soula. And both of these players we were actually able to feature on stream last weekend in their prior top 16 matchups. So I think it's going to be really great to see them once again, almost on a week-to-week basis, to see how they have really kind of changed up their strategies, what they've done for themselves and for their team in the past week in terms of prep, because the French team, we saw yesterday some really interesting counter teaming, some stuff like that ancient power Kyogre with Max Rockball to deal with Pokemon like Shedinja. But Aurélien, I don't remember if he used Shedinja last weekend, but I believe if you guys saw during that team preview, he's using something that we would probably consider the most standard team of the format the entire year in that Rinnia Sun. So I know that Brady, if he counter-teamed for something like a Shedinja on the opposite side of the field, going to be facing something a little bit different. But if we want to go into the breakdown between the two teams currently as they stand at the moment, then we'll be able to see exactly how close that the matches between France and the United States is.
Yeah, I've also noticed in chat that people said that they have not seen any Rinnya Sun teams on stream yet. So we are going to present one right now. And Brady notably won his matchup last week against Nick Homer from Netherlands, and Aurélien lost on stream against Pardo. So both players do have a lot to say here to really fight for their teams to squeeze into this top 4 spot. Here we have the matchup right now. On paper, we're gonna say it's 2-2. Some people know, like some of you in chat, I know have seen in social media who has won, but for stream content, let's just put them both at 2-2, right? And then proceed and then get into this match. But the matches that we see on screen right now, 3 of these have already been featured by us.
Yeah, I have managed to remain unspoiled, so please no spoilers for me, Evan. Do not tell me.
Exactly.
But yesterday we were able to see Nils Dunlop and Joseph Ugarte's matches. Both of them each won and lost against Alex Liss and Thomas Grouvy. Nils' team was that one that was so interestingly counter-teamed against Thomas. However, he still was not able to come out on top. Had some really interesting things going on for it, but one of the ways that you can really explain how these team formats work, and especially in the long run, once you've had, I think we're in our 8th week total, 8 weeks basically of scouting out other teams. France had to fight from the very beginning, I believe, as well, from the bracket. They were in that first group stage. So they at least as well, there was way more information on the French team from this 2022 format than versus the United States team, who was able to get that bye. But now both of these teams will have the bye for next year's format, so there'll be a little bit less information kind of moving forward as we get to break it down into maybe the Scarlet and Violet World Cup era, hopefully next year. But if we want to go between both of these trainers, both of them are incredibly accomplished players. I know Aurélien has been doing incredibly well in the seniors division, and that is not exactly the easiest place to be. And looking at all of those recent results from him, World Championships top 8, NA Internationals top 4, European Internationals top 4, Oceania Internationals top 4, just one LAIC Internats up there that he is, I'm sure, waiting for, even though this year may not be the year for it. Brady Smith, really accomplished as well, had a lot of success in the in the Ultra Series format at the start of 2020, Oceania International's top 8, Daytona Beach regional champion, Memphis regional champion, and the World Championships top cut. And like you said, Evan, in between, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on between this matchup here.
Yeah, Brady has been really consistent as a player all throughout Series 12, always iterating with this Zacian and Calyrex Shadow core. Kind of good friends with Edu as well, so not surprised, to see a lot of good success coming out from players like Edu, James Beck, and Emilio Forbes, with this Zacian and Calyrex Shadow core. He's bringing this team, the team that he won against the undefeated player from Netherlands, Nick Homer, last week. So Zacian, Calyrex, Shadow. But instead of the Rillaboom, you have that Landorus in the mix for more intimidate pressure. So Aurélien side, he's using the what we commonly call as Rinya Sun, and notably in Brady's top cut match of Worlds, he had to fight against Eric Rios, and we all know what Eric Rios brought. He brought Rinya Sun, right? So this seems to be a redemption match for Brady, going up against this team that knocked him out of the World's top cut bracket.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at having that double Intimidate on Brady Smith's side, this is exactly the team you want to be bringing it into. Getting those Intimidates cycled onto Pokemon like that Zacian and Groudon can be super helpful, especially because there isn't something like that Defiant Thundurus in the way. Brady Smith has a Thundurus on his own side, which does kind of mitigate the ability for Aurélien to maybe switch in his own Incineroar Frilly, maybe go for some moves like a Scary Face from the Grimmsnarl if that's the set that he is running. However, Aurelian's side, this Rinya Sun team that we've been seeing is oftentimes running now that Weakness Policy Charizard and Focus Sash Incineroar just to become absolutely dominant and allow for some more movement on their side of the field. Rinya Sun is a team that becomes very position heavy, especially in later parts of the game if Dynamax has already been used up. A lot of it is just sending in your own Zacian when you know it's not going to be intimidated. Try and get some big moves off. If you can already get that Gmax Wildfire up early and consistently add damage, it's going to be really helpful to kind of move forward. And if you can get that Weakness Policy boost on your Charizard, it becomes something that is, it doesn't have the greatest of defense stats, but it still can take plenty of hits, especially in its Dynamax form. So if it can start getting that big damage up and start to really kind of steamroll through the Pokemon on Brady Smith's side, then it's going to be tougher for him to maybe deal with, even though you have a Pokemon like Landorus that can go for something like a Max Rockfall and do that super effective damage, especially if Charty Berry is not the item that Charizard is holding.
Yeah, the Landorus does seem like a good adjustment from Edu's Worlds winning team, right? To be able to keep these Charizards in check. And I'm just so curious whether team fronts knew that Brady lost to a Rinya Sun matchup before and then decided to bring it for this week with Aurélien. So let's see how this match plays out as Aurélien leads with one of the more common leads from this composition, the Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, being quite position heavy, but catches the Thundurus on the leads.
Yeah, absolutely. That Thundurus coming in, getting that Defiant boost right out of the gate now, already put at +1 thanks to the Intimidate on the other side of the field, makes this Thundurus a Pokemon that actually could be a really good Dynamax user right out of the gate and maybe save your Landorus for something possibly later. Looks like Brady will be choosing to go for a Dynamax on this turn 1. This double Genie lead does, of course, put you into a kind of a strange 50-50, right? Because by bringing this Thundurus, and that does give you the opportunity to go for a Dynamax, you then also maybe say, do I still fake it out? Do I go for something with the Landorus? But you have the opportunity to just click Earthquake right now with your Landorus paired up next to the Thundurus on the opposite side of the field. Reflect is going to be a good way to stop some of this physical damage from both of these strong physical attackers on the opposite side of the field. But Max Knuckle, another great way to work through something like Reflect. Not exactly the strongest move, as we have said, it has only a 95 base power, but boosting the attack stat is going to be a really nice way to continue to start a strong move. Earthquake from Landorus won't hit into that partner Pokemon, will activate a Shuka Berry on the Incineroar early and hit into that Grimmsnarl as well. So at this point, right, you know that the Incineroar can't take another one of those, but it's using Burning Jealousy. A great move to stop both of these Pokemon from putting on as much pressure. So a really interesting turn 1.
So very early in the format, Burning Jealousy was discovered already in places like Taiwan, and here we see in full effect. Just go for that Reflect. Incineroar shrugged off that Earthquake. That was so impressive. and the Burning Jealousy now inflicts the burn on both Landorus and Thunderous. So yeah, next Knuckle, I think Brady kind of predicting that this might happen and then trying to preempt and just help his Pokemon do as much damage as possible. But Aurélien is really like whittling away at these Dynamax turns, and that Burning Jealousy strategy is so cool to see always.
Yeah, it's something that is really helpful to have in front of a Pokemon like Thunderous, whose stats you can't exactly lower, but if you can go for something like a burn, then you are not getting an extra Defiant boost. Sending in Groudon as well is another way to maybe get some more damage off, especially if it's got a move like Rock Slide, that double target rock type attack. Max Airstream, though, to boost up the speeds on Brady's side of the field into that Groudon. Groudon able to shrug that off pretty comfortably thanks to the Reflect and those burns on the opposite side of the field. You know, you can even be at +2 technically, but it still isn't all that fun. Earthquake from the Landorus, though, into the Pokemon on the other side. Really, you're seeing exactly how much that burn is piling up. Foul play from the Grimmsnarl onto the Thunderous with all of those boosts does a ton of damage, bringing this Thunderous down almost into the bottom 25% of its HP, and Landorus as well, taking extra burn chip damage.
Yeah, and Aurélien smartly, you know, does not click like a move like Light Screen or even like a move with speed control, because it would not like be very useful in this turn and could be useful in future turns if you already know that you've muted the physical attacker so much that Grimmsnarl could still survive for a few more turns and then let those Light Screen turns set for a bit longer towards the late game. Foul play is so interesting because it kind of ignores the burn right on the Thunderous and just does so much damage. Very important for like something like a Rock Slide to follow up right after that. So Brady is kind of making full use, you know, as much leverage as possible out of these max turns and going for this max Knuckle.
Yeah, and I love using the Light Screen on this turn, right? Because at this point, you've whittled the Pokemon on Brady's side down to much lower HP than normal. Even with this Earthquake, you have gotten the Grimmsnarl knocked out and done some more damage onto the Groudon on the opposite side of the field. And this Groudon can still go for a Fire Punch. It's in the sun into that Thunderous as a quick and easy knockout. This is going to force Brady to bring in either his Zacian or possibly if he's got the Calyrex in the back. But the Calyrex now coming in, these turns of Light Screen, especially if it is that Light Clay Grimmsnarl, which most of them that are running those double screens are, you know, it's going to be lasting for a long time. So it's not something that, you know, if it started on that very first turn instead of the Reflect, you may have less turns to kind of break through it. It's still 8 turns total, so it's still an absolutely massive amount of time in a doubles format. But you know, at this point too, you've put it so that this Calyrex is in a tough position. It can only do a couple of things, but it's still not going to do the max damage it wants. And Charizard coming in here with the Sun, going to be able to go for some really strong G-Max Wildfires into that Calyrex, just get that damage off. You're going to add more damage every single turn. This Landorus is holding Life Orb. It's also burnt. So every single turn, it's taking a bunch of damage. And if it's taking G-Max Wildfire damage on top of it, I think it's only going to have maybe 2 turns.
Yeah, and it's taking so much damage at this point, and Landorus is kind of the most important tool, right, to take out this Charizard. So Aurélien just played really well with this Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, just being able to neuter all these physical attackers and get Landorus down to so low that Life Orb just helped a little bit more. But if, you know, Charizard Dynamaxes here, you can pretty easily outspeed this Landorus and go for the KO there, something like a max Airstream. As we do see the Groudon actually switch into this Incineroar, putting the Intimidate down on the Landorus to just reduce the amount of damage Landorus does in case the Charizard does not target it.
Yeah, again, it's another great way to consistently just kind of put that pressure onto the Pokemon on Brady's side. If you went and called something like that Zacian switch in as well, you could have maybe gotten an Intimidate down onto the Zacian, maybe see if you kind of just try and lose the Zacian to something like a G-Max Wildfire. Rock Slide, though, actually avoids there, I believe, onto the Charizard, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, and does do a little bit of damage, super effective onto the Incineroar, but it's still taking damage as well. Astral Barrage does not do enough to get the knockout onto the Incineroar either. Max Airstream will be the move choice from this Charizard into the Calyrex, brings the Calyrex down into the red portion of that HP. Gonna boost the speed as well for this Charizard, who is already moving pretty fast. The Calyrex as well wasn't able to take advantage of the Max Airstream from that Thunderous that was on the field earlier. So now you're still taking that burn and you're still taking that Life Orb chip. And I think at this point too, Aurélien has put himself in a great position. Brady probably just trying to time out these Dynamax turns to allow his Zacian to come in and maybe not take a super effective G-Max Wildfire.
the Charizard does seem to be pretty bulky, so I'm not sure if it is actually that weakness policy set, but Aurélien does seem very confident, right? With that Intimidate onto the Landorus yet again, and that Reflect already set up. Landorus was at +1 speed and should go for that Rock Slide first, but I think that Rock Slide miss didn't really matter. It would kind of matter for Brady to get information on whether that was a weakness policy set or not, but Aurélien just put himself into a very good position to be able to go for Airstream here, followed by the Astro Barrage, right, and try and clean up this game.
Yeah, even getting that Astro Barrage off didn't do that much damage onto either of the Pokemon on the other side of the field, both the Groudon and the Charizard respectively. That G-Max Wildfire also just whittling that Calyrex down to have really 5 HP left, and thanks to that Max Airstream from the Charizard's still going to be moving first. It's got a really clean knockout if it wants it. You may want to just get rid of that Calyrex first thing though, because then at that point you don't have to worry about it maybe trying to get a Chilling Knee boost if it gets a knockout and then not ignore it, but it still would go down at the end of the turn anyway. So that may just be something that you're willing to take the knockout on if you want to send your Incineroar back in, get the knockout onto the Zacian possibly, or most importantly an Intimidate, have Fake Out pressure for the next turn as well, and then you can even still go for something like a Flare Blitz, but at this point too, preserving the Sun I think is going to be really helpful. Intimidate onto the Zacian this turn as well. May try and prevent your prevent the Charizard from getting knocked out by a Behemoth Blade, but protect this turn, at least just to get rid of this last turn of Dynamax, especially something like a G-Max Wildfire, and just try and mitigate some of this damage because it is such a strong move, and it still does over half to this Zacian, even though that is a quarter of the damage it normally would have done. So Astro Barrage does get the knockout onto the Incineroar, but you're still moving slower than this Charizard, and at that point too, by not being able to get the knockout on the Charizard this turn, it allows for this Charizard on the next turn to maybe just go for something like a Heat Wave, or if it's got a different type of fire type move, just to get that easy knockout because you've only got one Pokemon left on the other side of the field.
Yeah, I think that Aurélien was just playing very carefully with all these switches from Incineroar to Groudon, just to be able to control this Zacian and reduce the damage output, just in case something goes wrong and maybe the Charizard goes down. But that Wildfire damage into the Calyrex Shadow is able to take it off the field, so even though it got that Grim Knee boost, it isn't able to put on much pressure. But overall, I think Brady just got a lot of good information coming out from Aurélien. We saw that Burning Jealousy. We kind of see those damage rolls into the Zacian here, and Brady has been playing pretty well, like putting the pressure on, but unfortunately just ran out of tools towards this end game and has to throw in the towel here.
Yeah, I mean, the lead that he brought out is a lead that I definitely enjoyed from his team. I think it was a really great, strong start. You immediately put on Intimidate pressure onto a team that's got a lot of big physical threats. Grimmsnarl and Incineroar is typically one of the more common leads you will see from Rinnia Sun, just because it is a lead that can be so defensive and positional, but put you in a good position for whatever big threats you've brought in the back, especially stuff like the Charizard and like that Groudon, right? We didn't even see Zacian come to that game. Grimmsnarl as well, just showing exactly how frustrating Grimmsnarl can be. Once it sets those screens and you've helped out those Pokemon in the back, it becomes a thing that you really just don't want to deal with. And at this point, right, you have to wonder, maybe do you lead that Zacian as well as the Thundurus maybe, and just try and have that damage output? You may still take a Fake Out in that first turn, but maybe go for a Max Airstream. Then you still take a Burning Jealousy, but if you go for the Max Airstream, assume that there's a Fake Out and then a Light and then a Reflect on the opposite side of the field, then maybe that can be an opportunity to kind of deal with some of the damage from that output there. It's kind of you could even go for a Max Lightning, I suppose, too, and just try and force it. But instead, you've got Grimmsnarl and Charizard as the lead, and Incineroar and Thundurus, which is another great option as well. That Fake Out pressure onto that Grimmsnarl is going to be huge, and you can go for a very strong Max Lightning into the Charizard on the opposite side.
Yeah, so Max Lightning, but as usual with a Rinnia Sun team, you always have to be aware of whether there would be a ground type switching coming up from Aurelian's side. But yeah, I'm very curious to see, like, Brady is yet again, right, down one game to this composition. And like the foul play from the Grimmsnarl earlier also made such a good impact. So I'm very curious to see how Brady manages this, right, and then goes into this game too. I think the Incineroar Thundurus lead makes a lot of sense to be able to put off that pressure of Fake Out and at the same time like Dynamaxing. But we do not see any switch outs from Aurélien here.
Yeah, no switch outs here whatsoever. Going to just be that Dynamax Thundurus first things first. At this point too, if you made that call, it would have definitely been pretty helpful to get that big damage off first turn. But like you said, there is such a threat, especially with two ground types on Aurélien's team in that Gastrodon and Groudon, that it's something you have to be aware of. But Charizard is a Pokemon that loves to go for that Gigantamax last turn, and then instead have every single Pokemon be afraid of taking something like a G-Max Wildfire instead of maybe going for something like a Switch. Charizard's not too worried about having an Intimidate on it because it is, a special attacker, and you're at least forcing this Grimmsnarl to maybe go for a Fake Out, but no Fake Out this turn. Reflect instead from that Grimmsnarl to stop some of this big physical damage from the Thundurus on the opposite side. A Max Airstream, though, more importantly, meant to up the speeds here. You will get that boost to your speed, and you don't have something like a Burning Jealousy to be afraid of, but depending on what this Incineroar went for, if it went for something like a Flare Blitz into the Grimmsnarl just to get damage, it could definitely be pretty helpful. Taking a Max Airstream, though, from the Charizard on the opposite side, just trying to deal maybe with some of the damage of getting that speed boost to match on Aurelian's side. Incineroar going for Parting Shot, actually, a really great technique to help with this Charizard dropping that special attack and allowing for Brady to maybe reposition a little bit.
This is just a bit reminiscent of the world's finals match where there could be a possibility that the Charizard is holding the weakness policy and Brady does not fall for it, because behind Reflect, this Charizard can be really bulky, and then once it's boosted, then it can get out of control. So going for the Max Airstream on both sides, right, both the Thundurus and the Charizard to match speeds and play things a little bit more carefully. But now the Landorus actually comes in and it's not intimidated. It might, with that Life Orb, do quite a lot of damage into this Charizard, coupled with something like a Max Airstream or Max Lightning even.
Yeah, this is the turn, right, that I think Landorus really needs to shine here. It doesn't have the threat of getting a Burning Jealousy. You can still see if the Incineroar switches in on Aurelian's side. It will be tough for that Landorus, but then you're giving the Thundurus that Defiant boost, so it still reduces the threat of maybe the Incineroar coming in, but Grimmsnarl is going to switch out this turn, and it looks like that's Incineroar if I'm not... No, it is a Groudon. Okay, just making sure. Groudon coming in, introducing that Sun to help that partner Pokemon Charizard get as much damage off as it can this turn. The Max Airstream from the Thundurus will still be the first move to go out into that Groudon. Handles it more like a champ than maybe that Grimmsnarl would have, and if you want to keep that Grimmsnarl in the back to get some more Reflex up maybe later for that Calyrex Shadow Rider, that is a great way to do so. G-Max Wildfire with the boost from the Sun is a ton of damage. It's enough to get the knockout into the Landorus, so that is a huge switch in most likely from that Groudon to come in and help boost up that Charizard. Solar power damage will start to kind of tick down here, but that is kind of a huge reason to get rid of one of the biggest threats on the opposite side of the field.
That was really strange because the Thundurus did go for that Airstream to boost that Landorus first, right? But Charizard with that +1 in speed still managed to outspeed this Landorus. So taking out the Landorus once and for all, Brady isn't able to go for that combination and go for Rock Slide to do significant damage into the Charizard. The good news is Groudon is on the field, and also Thundurus went for yet another Airstream to keep up with speed, so Thundurus should be able to move before the Charizard here. But Aurélien very smartly, kept going for Airstreams instead of the very obvious Wildfire to, make sure the Charizard gets up to speed very literally, and then maybe he can outspeed this Calyrex Shadow that Brady just sent in even.
Yeah, at that point, right, if you get that Max Airstream up, I don't believe there is a light screen on the opposite side of the field yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that with the lack of a light screen means that you're going to be able to do way more damage with your Calyrex maybe, and if you can go for something like an Airstream into the Groudon, maybe do a little bit more damage if you need to, and then get some damage off later, then that would be maybe a good way to start racking up some Grenade boost. But to protect this turn is another good way to stall out this final turn of Dynamax. Max Airstream into the Groudon does a ton of damage, actually, way more than I think the last one did. A critical hit, yeah, that has to be, yeah. So that critical hit huge into that Groudon is going to make it way easier maybe for this Calyrex to get up something like a Grenade boost early thanks to an Astral Barrage. But G-Max Wildfire through the Protect into that Calyrex doesn't do a whole lot of damage thanks to the Protect only showing a quarter of it, and the Shadow Claw into the Calyrex as well, not going to be doing anything, and more Solar Power Chip, which is dangerous when you're facing in front of a Pokemon that wants to get an easy knockout.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see that Aurélien kept targeting the Thundurus' partner, right? And Thundurus is still sitting pretty healthy, even like with quite a lot of health. And more importantly, the Charizard did set up that G-Max Wildfire, so the health of Brady's Pokemon is gonna keep whittling away. A very timely move to do it at the last turn of Dynamax. But Brady just kept going for that Max Airstreams to make sure that Thundurus and Calyrex should, be able to outspeed both these Pokemon. And yeah, you're right, there's no light screen on the field, so I think there's a lot of pressure coming out from Brady's side, and he has maneuvered himself to be able to do so. And keeping that Thundurus, at full health, it just feels more comfortable for him to be able to dish out so much damage onto both this Charizard and Groudon.
Yeah, and I mean, Charizard, right? It's got, depending on the moves that it's got, if it's running Blast Burn, that is going to be a fully accurate move, but it will require a recharge. If it's running Heat Wave, that does have a chance to miss. If you want to get this damage off because you are still moving very quickly, it would be helpful, but Protect, I think, is going to be a good way to maybe prevent one of those max moves from coming up. But Brick Break is a good option to tear down that Reflect, and a great tech move to have as well. Astro Barrage going to be coming out. We'll hit into this Grimmsnarl that is switched in, and that will still do a really nice chunk of damage, especially, you're not too worried at this point, because if you get up if they get up a light screen, then at some point as well, you're going to be able to Brick Break that away. More GMX Wildfire damage going to whittle down the Pokemon on Brady's side, bring them both close to either under half or very close to it.
I think it's a very good switch and very good play coming out from Aurélien, making full use of the tools that he still has left. He still has all 4 Pokemon, so bringing that Grimmsnarl in to soak up that damage from the Astro Barrage. But now, on this turn, like, both players are giving each other choices. Like, the Grimmsnarl, do you go for a Reflect or a Light Screen, or do you even go for that Thunder Wave, right? Like, we do see here, it misses into the Calyrex, because it does make sense, right, to be able to bring Calyrex down in speed and the Charizard to finally be able to kill the Calyrex. Then this Wild Charge isn't able to take out that Grimmsnarl.
Which is huge, because then you can get that double boost from the Astral Barrage by doing enough damage to get it down into range, but not doing enough damage to really knock it out. That is a huge amount. You are not getting up a light screen. You are not getting up another Reflect. That Thunder Wave miss was huge, because then it confirmed the fact that your Calyrex was still going to be able to go before something like the Charizard. You're still taking this damage this turn, but now anything Aurélien sends in is not going to have that light screen boost and is going to be hit by a +2 Astral Barrage moving forward, and that is not great news for this Groudon that is also at incredibly low HP and whatever else Aurélien has in the back, and that's this Zacian, and Zacian is not going to be able to move faster than this Calyrex whatsoever, especially now that there is no more opportunity for speed control on Aurelien's side.
Man, such a huge miss there. So like, I'm not sure if the Grimmsnarl, that like going for screens makes more sense, because that's like you can 100% get it off, right? That Brick Break coming out from the Thundurus just gave Aurélien too many choices to make, and I thought that that Thunder Wave was a good move. Just unfortunate that it doesn't happen, and then like the Charizard went down for nothing, because if Thunder Wave hit, then Charizard would have been able to take another KO and then force like a 2v2 or 3v2 situation. But here, Thundurus is still boosted in speed, like +3 speed already, and is able to go for the damage onto the Zacian, and here comes a +2 Astral Barrage into both Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's easily enough to get that knockout, even thanks to the confirmation of that chip damage. Chip damage from a Wild Charge, which is still such a strong move that it almost feels silly to say. But Brady, knowing at that point, getting that Grimmsnarl off of the field just allowed for him to really kind of set up that Calyrex in a position that it wanted to be in. You did still use your Dynamax on the Thundurus, which is still a great option because you're getting your speed up. Losing the Landorus really did not slow you down in a way that you maybe thought that it would have. The Calyrex being able to come in for free is still incredibly helpful, especially once you've been able to get that Airstream damage onto so many Pokemon on the opposite side of the field, because it does put them closer and closer into that Astral Barrage range. I think at that point too, it becomes a little bit of a funkier situation wherein you can maybe see on like maybe in a game 3 what your best option is going to be. Like if that Calyrex is still going to sit in the back for you and is still going to be maybe your main late game sweeper, how do you take care of the Grimmsnarl in the next game? Because you have to imagine that Aurélien is not going to let it go down for free he didn't let it go down for free even in that last game, but is not going to let it go down without a fight in game 3, because it is such a pivotal part of his team to deal with those big offensive threats.
Yeah, I think some might say that that Thunder Wave miss was just important for the game, but I think Brady does have a good game plan. That Wild Charge chip into the Grimmsnarl did significant damage, right? Because there was no Reflect up, and probably still has another Zacian in the back. Thundurus can't get Thunder Wave, so Thundurus should be able to do the job of taking out the Grimmsnarl, and the Zacian will still be the fastest on the field to threaten the Charizard and the opposing Zacian. So I think Brady still had a good plan there. But we do see a change up of leads. Brady is actually going back to his Game 1 lead. But Aurélien brings that Grimmsnarl and Charizard, a lead that we always see from the Rinyasan team.
Yeah, probably the most common lead. I remember, I think, sitting at World, seeing all the Rinya Suns on stream, and it was just every time you'd see that Grimmsnarl Charizard lead, you're like, all right, here we go again. Not in a bad way, but just tonight, there is a lot of Grimmsnarl Charizard leads, especially when you don't exactly know what the Grimmsnarl is going to do. But thankfully, by game 3, you've managed to collect a lot of information, knowing that Thunder Wave is that one of those last moves on that Grimmsnarl is safe for maybe some sort of physical attacking move, is a really nice confirmation that you're not dealing with something like a Scary Face. You can go for a max airstream with your Thunderous for free because you know that it's not going to get Scary Faced. I mean, it wouldn't anyway because you don't want to deal possibly with another Defiant boost, but it can't get Thunder Waved either, so you have that opportunity to just keep getting those speed boosts. You also can't Thunder Wave the Landorus as well thanks to its ground typing. So at this point, you've got a pretty clean way to just start getting some damage up. You can even go for something like a Max Lightning later if you want to get some super effective damage off into the Charizard. But I think something that Brady has done really well is he has just played around the fact that there may be a weakness policy on this Charizard, right? He has consistently hit it with things like Max Airstream, like Astral Barrage, just moves that are not going to do that super effective damage, because whether or not he knows that it is that weakness policy, it has just become such a threat in this World and post-Worlds format that you have to pay attention to it. And Landorus going for a Protect this turn, I think, is a really nice way to maybe stop it from taking a bunch of damage, reflect from the Grimmsnarl once again. We've seen that on turn 1 of all 3 games at this point. Really useful, but Max Airstream gonna still be able to do a nice chunk of damage onto this Charizard and once again just boost up the speeds, and that's exactly what Thunderous is here to do.
Yeah, Thunderous is here to like boost up the speeds for the Landorus. I'm just curious to see that interaction again. Charizard instead goes for that Wildfire. You know, this kind of confirms that it is that weakness policy set, since you know you might want to go for that Rock Slide onto the Charizard, and it's some of it has been trained so well to be able to take that Rock Slide, proc that weakness policy and do so much damage. But here we won't be faced with that problem again of whether the Landorus will be able to outspeed this Charizard. Like the math has been a bit different since the multipliers work that way, but now an Airstream or even a Lightning into the Charizard plus Max Rock 4 hopefully should be able to take out this very big lizard on the field. It's just sitting so healthy in the green right now, so Brady really does have to make a educated choice here on what to do. The Grimmsnarl, you know, it can't go for moves like it showed all 4 moves: Light Screen, Reflect, Thunder Wave, and Foul Play. So could be a max guard Foul play right now, but we don't see it. And the Max Lightning actually takes out the Charizard. This might be a creep.
Yeah, critical hit there for sure, right? Oftentimes these Charizard are kind of are trained to handle those, but the Max Lightning plus Rock Slide play is incredibly smart because you have that speed advantage. You know you're going to be faster, so even if you proc the weakness policy there, you then are still allowing your Landorus to go next turn with a Rock type move. It doesn't exactly have perfect accuracy, but still being able to go for it this turn into that Grimmsnarl, just once again doing exactly what Landorus has done for years at this point, which is click Rock Slide and get flinches when it really wants to, instead of getting up something like a Foul Play onto either of these big physical attackers. And that is going to be great moving forward because now you have at least put this Grimmsnarl into a position where it's not going to want to take any sort of big move from the Thunderous on the opposite side of the field. You can still go for something maybe like a Max Airstream, continue to boost your speeds. You are still taking this damage every single turn from that G-Max Wildfire, but the G-Max Wildfire was got up early, so you're not going to have it as late into the game maybe as you would have assumed. And now with Zacian coming in, Zacian is going to be dealing with a big couple of threats here.
That was really rough coming out like from Aurelian's side to get critical hit, right, and also get flinch and not be able to dish off that damage from Foul Play. So just unfortunate, but I think from Brady's end, he did come into this game 3 with a very good game plan. Like, this lead does make sense, right, and it's always putting that pressure on, always going for Max Airstreams to boost himself up, and going for the Max Lightning, not fearing a Groudon switch in, is also a gutsy play to do to make sure you get that get rid of that Charizard ultimately. So here, going for another Max Airstream, Zacian unfortunately is forced to protect, if not it would eat up a very strong Earthquake from this Landorus. So probably giving this Grimmsnarl an opportunity to Foul Play.
Yeah, that Grimmsnarl, though, not going to be able to handle the rest of that damage from the Earthquake, really showing that this Life Orb Landorus on Brady's side of the field is such a problem to deal with, right? You know, it was Life Orb plus Burn plus G-Max Wildfire in Game 1, but still, even with the Life Orb and the G-Max Wildfire, it's already down into the bottom 25% of its HP, but having those Airstream boosts is going to be really pivotal because you can at least get this Earthquake off before the Zacian is able to move. I don't think Aurélien has anything on the other side of the field unless he brought the Incineroar with him that is going to be able to stop this Landorus from getting this move off first thing. If it is, I believe it is Groudon, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is. That's the Groudon there. And Groudon coming in is still not going to be able to put a stop to this Landorus from at least getting off a big Earthquake. And even still, you can go for something like a Wild Charge with your Thunderous, just get more damage off into the Zacian as well. And you've got this Groudon on the opposite side that can't click its favorite move, which is Precipice Blades. So now it's either going to have to go for something like a Rock Slide, if that's the Rock type move that it's carrying, or go for single target moves, which is also the bane of Zacian's existence, is the fact that it can only click one target at a time.
Yeah, so Brady has just really put so much pressure on. The Zacian is forced to protect again. So here comes the Brick Break to possibly break off that Reflect. Oh, that's another critical hit. Salt in the wound. And here comes the Earthquake. It should be at full power with the Life Orb, but it does not take out the Zacian. Zacian is just really bulky. And that double protect kind of gone to waste from Aurelian's side. I think not knowing the calcs there on his own Zacian. Fire Punch isn't able to take off that Thunderous, but with this G-Max Wildfire that the Charizard set all the way in turn 1, both Pokemon are able to go down and force this 2v2 on the field right now.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're Brady, right, you've still got the fastest Pokemon in the back, and that's Counteract Shadow Rider. You know you may have to deal with something like a Protect from the opposite side, but at this point you can just click Astral Barrage every single turn, and you should be pretty good to go, especially with the pairing of your own Zacian. If you have your own Zacian, you can go for a Behemoth Blade into the one on Aurelian's side that typically does between 70 to 75% to other Zacians, kind of just depending on how they are trained and how they are built. I think at this point, too, though, you know, I think Brady has put himself in a really good position to just kind of wrap this game 3. You know, he had a really tough, he had kind of a tougher lead, right? Because at this point he adjusted really well to make sure that Grimmsnarl was never as big of a threat as it wanted to be. And by also making sure that Charizard wasn't able to do really enough damage onto the Pokemon on his side. And by leading 2 Pokemon that can do that damage to him, then he's going to be in a good spot. The Zacian getting knocked out by this Astral Barrage here means that the Grenade Boost will be in play for the next turn, unless there is something like a Shadow Clock coming out. But Behemoth Blade from Zacian, fully accurate, hitting into this Groudon, is going to take care of the last little bit of HP that this Groudon has, and that's going to take this game 3 for Brady, and that is going to take this game for the United States as well. I think at some point, like you said, I think some of the results are coming in, so we may be able to show those at the end of this game, if I'm not mistaken, which would be great, because then we can kind of continue to wrap up. We've gone one quadrant of the bracket at a time, so at this point we can begin to kind of wrap up what is in that top 4, and then we will be looking down into that bottom section. So, you know, I think at some point as well, it's really great for these trainers and for these players. It's such a tough, that corner there was one that I said yesterday, I'm like, that one's going to go to 4-3. Like, it's going to go to 4-3. And at this point, right, it's 3-2. So at some point, it's going to have to go to 4-3, possibly, unless it went to 4-2. But it does give you the opportunity to show exactly how close those 2 regions are and how talented they are. All of these groups in top 8 have been incredibly difficult. You're not having any easy wins in any stage of this bracket, you know, so I think between those 2 teams, there is a lot of interesting team building. And again, we were treated to such a delight of a match yesterday between Tomac Revui and Nils Dunlop, just in the conversation of playing in a team-based competition. And it's still great to see as well, just kind of the matches between these. Like you said, it almost felt like Aurélien tried to bring Brady's kryptonite almost to this match with that Rinyasan.
Yeah, and so unfortunate the way things turned out. Like, there was a little bit of hex involved, but props to Brady for really putting on that pressure, putting in 2 Pokemon that are not his restricted, and then keeping the restricted, the fast Pokemon in the back, right, to always ensure to secure a good end game and always put on so much pressure. And that's the offensive side of this Calyrex Shadow and Zacian combination of the team. A bit different from how Eduardo played it in the Worlds finals, right? And we might be able to show the final matchup now on screen between the United States and France, because all 7 games have actually been played. So from the back end, France also, like, they won 2 games in a row. So they actually reported the results, and it's somewhat public on the Discord server. So we are able to see that France actually made a comeback from 1-3 all the way to 4-3 against the United States. That's really mind-blowing. So really congratulations to France for pulling that off. One thing that my friend from VR noted is that they defeated Italy, China, Italy, and then the US back-to-back 3 weeks in a row. What an amazing accomplishment.
Those were all teams that I believe got into at least the top 8 last year. Italy was in the finals. The United States, I believe, got into top 8 as well. If I'm not mistaken, this could be wrong. However, yes, we are showing it is 4-3. France has moved on and defeated the United States, forcing the United States to stay in that top 8 position where they wrapped up last year, but allowing France to move on into these quarterfinals. There is still one more corner of this bracket that we have yet to fully quantify. However, having the opportunity to be able to watch some matches between Thailand and Poland is going to be really interesting, I think, to be able to show off. At least in our next match, we know that it will be a match point for Thailand, and Thailand has really been playing absolutely out of their mind recently. And I know Poland has a lot of pressure that they are feeling, especially knowing that they have to win every single match as it's currently 3-1. So they have to do what France did to the United States, which is win 3 straight to be able to move on against Thailand. However, at that point, that still means we need to take a quick break as there is still that one more match to go. So do not go anywhere, anybody. We will be back very shortly with that final match between Thailand and Poland.